Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we usually go back and look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. However, today we have a special bonus episode where we are discussing Netflix 2024 science fiction drama called Uglies. This is directed by McG and stars Joey King, Keith Powers, Chase Stokes, Brianna Tju, Luis Castellanos, Charmie Lee, and Laverne Cox. I'm Jesse, I'm your host. Thanks for joining me today for this special bonus episode for a 2024 original film. As always on our show, if this is a film you haven't seen yet and you're keen on checking it out, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on because we will spoil the film as we go through this show. So we do start our episodes with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one, it's a world where teenagers are classified as ugly. All they have to look forward to is their 16th birthday, when they can have a procedure to make them pretty and let them live in a perfect city. Not a great one, but that's all good. That's where this film's at. This film is a hard one to sort of describe because this is obviously about materialistic looks, and that's where this film is going, and that's where the discussion will lead to. But before we talk about the actual film, we do like to sort of discuss how it ended up on Netflix. Before we do that, the translations for this film around the world. So in German, it's called Ugly, Don't Lose Your Face. Quite funny. In Hungarian, it's called They Are Ugly. Cool. In Russian, it's called Freak. I think they probably got this a little bit misinterpreted in translation. In Chinese, it's called Ugly Person, and in Ukrainian, it's called Disgusting. So some pretty aggressive words there. The tagline for this film was "Perfection is an illusion." So obviously ties in with that idea of what we've already spoken about. But this film is based on the novel called Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, and it was published back in 2005. There are 3 more books following this first book in the series, so 4, as well as 4 spin-off novels and graphic novels too. So this has got quite a big following across the world. I think I read somewhere 6 million books of this series in print around the world. So a lot of people know this story. We go to 2006, so a year after the book was released, where a feature film adaptation was announced to be in development with 20th Century Fox, was what it was called back then, and they purchased the rights to the novel. John Davis was attached as producer, and then sort of nothing until we go to September of 2020, where the project re-entered development with Joey King signing on to star in the lead role as Tally Youngblood, and she also would serve as executive producer. So if we think about Netflix, we know Joey King from the Kissing Booth films, for those that have seen it, as well as that recent film, I think it was Family Affair, the Zac Efron one with Nicole Kidman. She was also in that too. We did a bonus episode for that as well. Joey King, she signed onto the project after having been a fan of the books. She said that Tally, the character, had been a dream role of hers for years. So apparently it all started one day when Joey King was homesick from school and her older sister pushed a copy of the book into her hands. She was like, just read the first chapter, and if you don't want to continue, then you don't have to. And King recalled that, despite her earlier reluctance, she fell headfirst into the world of Uglies. So there's a little bit of a supporting reason as to why Joey King is in this film. McG, the director, this is commentary from him. He said that the film's really about beauty as interior. Okay, that's a theme. We'll get to that later as well. But he said it's a commentary on what we're experiencing today, where so many people can't just take a photograph and post it on social media. You've got to put it through the filter. You've got to edit it. You've got to do the thing to present this idolized version of beauty. And this is a moment to say, take a deep breath, work on your inner game, love people for who they are, and accept yourself for who they are. And strangely, it's a much more fruitful way to live. Wow, look at that, the prophet, McG. McG, he said that, he met with the author of the book, Westfeld. So he had a bit of a play in this film as well. They met on the set on the first day, and the author said that McG, he was carrying this dog-eared copy of Uglies with hundreds of post-it notes on it as well. And they were shooting Tally's travels in the wild that first day. And McG's first question to the author was, does spaghetti bolognese taste bad the first time Tally eats it? Or is it only terrible after she's been eating it for 2 weeks straight? And the author immediately felt that his book was in the right hands, literally and figuratively. He said, I was thinking, damn, this guy really cares about the book, but also the world that's inside the book. All the little details that make a story feel specific and real. So lots of love between the author and director for this film. The author also had another reason why McG was the perfect filmmaker to bring his novel to life. He said, a sense of fun. Here's a super important thing about Uglies, he said. It's set in a dystopia, but it's full of people who are having fun anyway. The Uglies play pranks, ride hoverboards, sneak into parties, they jump off buildings in bungee jackets. If you put McG in a dystopia, he would totally be that guy. He then went on to say, when I wrote the book in the early 2000s, I was mostly talking about real plastic surgery. And obviously, we're in 2024, 25 years later, or 20 years later since the book came out. And most people, what they do with their appearance now is digital. You blur your face or filter it. So he thinks that the themes and ideas are still relevant today. On a sequel for this film, no, I can't, they're already talking about sequels, but they said the audience needs to speak up and say we should finish the book series. Obviously, it's a series of books. The story goes on, but we need to have everybody clamour for it because it's tough to get movies made and it needs to be worth it, and they're expensive, McG said. He said, we're all very optimistic that the stories will continue, and of course, that's what we signed up for in the first place. It's a series of books, and we want to tell the full story. Wild. Wild that they're so enthusiastic about this project. Apparently, the film is literally or identically the same to an original Twilight Zone episode from season 5 called Number 12 Looks Just Like You. Haven't seen that episode, but keen to check it out to see the similarities, I guess. Filming happened in the back end of 2021, so in the start of 2022 in Feb, Joey King revealed that production had finished. So if they filmed in 2021, we're now in 2024. They've sort of held it for 3 years, which is an interesting choice from Netflix. Obviously, books to film adaptations, we see changes, and apparently the end has a big change. Especially in the movie, we see that Tally has that transformation, and she reveals that she kept her scar, whereas apparently the book ended with the moment that she sort of announced, I'm Tally Youngblood, make me pretty. And the first look at Tally post-operation didn't come until the sequel, which is called Pretty. So, this probably makes sense because we don't know if there's going to be a sequel, so you need to have, as an audience, that in the back of your mind that she still has that inner self, a part of her as well. The first 3 days, this was on Netflix from the 13th of September to the 15th of September, it had 20 million views. So first 3 days, 20 million views, debuted at number 2 on the Netflix chart, so I'm sure Netflix would be fairly okay with that. It did hit Netflix on the 13th of September 2024. It was filmed in and around Atlanta. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? So Rotten Tomatoes, this is interesting. It sits at 15%. That's on 40 reviews, so that is definitely rotten. Audience, fair bit higher, 50%, so still not great. That's on more than 500 ratings. IMDb, it's got 1,700 ratings, sits at a 5.9 out of 10. Whereas we go to Letterboxd, 1.5 out of 5 on nearly 60,000 ratings, been logged by nearly 70,000 people. And Metacritic on the traffic light system, I think it's the first time in a while we've seen both the critics and audience have it on that red on the traffic light system. The critics, 34 out of 100 on 12 critic reviews, and the audience sits at a 3.7 out of 10 on 31 reviews. So not very positive reaction for this one. What are my early thoughts? Obviously, this film, it's made for a certain demographic. I'm sure it hits the marks for them. It hits the mark for them. I know it hits the mark for that category. But the problem for me is that the film follows the release, I guess, of some pretty decent YA adaptations. You think about Hunger Games, you think about the Divergent series, and these all sort of outshine this film, which realistically has probably come 10 years too late. So I'm not too positive on this one either. Let's look at the character. So Tally, this is her story. She's a young person who's focused on gaining the beauty that she's obviously waited her life for. Her parents have rejected her almost because she's not a pretty yet. They've sent her off to this school so she can gain that procedure to become pretty. And the film's her story. It's about making decisions, learning from mistakes, discovering the ability to question authority, what's right, what's wrong, and what her inner self actually means to her too. I guess she's super strong-willed as well. She never quits. Sort of like a strong female hero in this film. I get that, so that's a real positive. Paris is her best friend prior to any sort of transformation. He's 2 months older, I think it was, so he gets that beautiful treatment before her. So he goes and has it, and then their sort of connection dwindles. He doesn't reach out to her anymore. And that's sad for them, or sad for Tally in particular, because they're so close and they make promises to stay friends. And, it's almost impossible for Paris to do this once he becomes pretty, because he's no longer himself or the person that Tally did have a connection with. The other sort of side characters, I guess, Shay, we've got to mention. So Shay she's a fellow ugly who shares her birthday with Tally. They sort of connect randomly because they're both doing the wrong thing. They connect, they grow their friendship. Shay has this interest in doing adventurous things. She rides hoverboards. She wants to discover, like, what the world has to offer other than materialistic things. And she has no intention of becoming a pretty, and she wants to explore the world. So that's where I guess the two characters are so different, because Tally's been dreaming of this moment, whereas Shay doesn't want this moment. And she sort of pushes Tally to sort of, try different things as well. The other two people I mentioned, David, he's the leader, I guess, of this breakaway community that lives life normally. He's a good-hearted person. He wants what's right. His parents are the same. They're working on an oppositional treatment to what's going on in this pretty city. And, he's probably the best performance in the film, or the character that probably means the most in this film, realistically. The only other person in this film is Dr. Cable, the big bad villain. But we don't have any motives for what she's doing or why she's doing it. We just know that she's the bad person and wants to ruin the world. So that's where we're at with that. The director, McG, like no stranger to Netflix original films. We know McG. We've got episodes on these films for Netflix that he's done. He did The Babysitter, as well as the sequel, The Babysitter Killer Queen, as well as that film Rim of the World. Like I said, episodes on these, but he's got 52 other directing credits in film for the Charlie's Angels films, the Terminator Salvation films, so you'd know him, as well as being a big producer. Like, he's produced a lot of Netflix films as well, especially ones we've done too. He's did, there's a rom-com film called When We First Met. He produced that. He produced the teen film Tall Girl, as well as that Christmas holiday one with Emma Roberts called Holidate. So some more Netflix original films you might want to check out if you like his work, and we do have episodes on those too. All right, let's talk about some scenes. What did I like? What didn't I like? So, standout scenes. I think the music throughout fit really well for a teen film. Apart from that, everything else is pretty ordinary for me. I think we Tally, the first scene where we see her entering the city, she breaks into the city, and it's like almost an attempt to awe the audience with the special effects and the massiveness and color and grid of the city. It just prolonged like the scene way too long, and it was way too slow. So for me, not great. And then the follow-up of Tally's actual escape from the city, like this ridiculous bungee jacket thing. Obviously, it's a part of the book, but on screen, I'm not sure it works too well, because she jumps off the building with it, and it just highlighted some of the really poor CGI, which sort of occurs throughout the film, unfortunately, too, especially with the hoverboards that Tally and Shay ride throughout the film as well. There's a scene where Paris comes to convince Tally to go and find Shay. It was just so obvious that Dr. Cable had sent him, and it just, I don't know, it just felt useless. There's this character, Croy, who's the one character in this sort of village of people that have escaped or living their own life, who sort of is suspicious of Tally, I guess. And, he catches her opening this bunker at one stage, and like that doesn't go anywhere, which was annoying. And, at the end as well, she's like, you were right. I was a bad person. He's like, no, I wasn't. Thank you. It was just lame dialogue throughout. There's a scene where Shay, they're trying to convince Tally to stay in their village, and they get up in this helicopter, and Shay gets knocked out of the helicopter, and straight away Tally sort of like throws a rope and goes straight after into the fire, which is quite hilarious. How she built these skills and the ability to do that and know what to do and have no fear. And then afterwards, they come back and everyone's like, wow, Tally risked her life to save someone that we all care about, because no one dives from a helicopter. It's like, no, they don't. Tally wakes up at one stage. She's staying in the village, and she wakes up and she goes outside her tent, and there's just David, this guy who's meant to be her love connection, I guess, and just bathing in the water. She has a perv and then just goes back to her tent. Why? That added nothing. That was so weird. There's a scene where David teaches Tally how to use a bow and arrow, and he's like holding her, and it's just like, one of those things that they're trying to build this connection between the two. And then there's a scene where he gives her his gloves. She's got blisters on her hands, so he gives her gloves, and then they make this big deal out of it because in their society he made these, and if you give things away, then you must really like them. So I was like, oh god, real people don't say this sort of stuff. There's another line. It was like, I've done so many bad things. It makes me feel like I'm just ugly. Like laugh out loud commentary. And this was Tally, and then David responds, and he's like rubbing her face and says, what you do and the way you think makes you beautiful. Real people don't say this in real life to people. Towards the end, Tally runs back to her school and finds her friends, and I need your help to make a diversion so we can sort of do this sort of stuff. They just jump on board, no questions asked, and say, yep, sure, we'll do it. It just felt weird. It felt really weird. And finally too, like, Paris. He dies. He hangs off the ledge, I guess, and he falls to his death into the water below. It was just such a Disney death. It's like, Gaston, Mufasa, all those Disney villains that fall off cliffs and die. It was just, I don't know. I've done my best. All right, let's talk about the themes, the ideas. This film, beauty. Beauty is obviously something that has an outrageous standard set by society. And this question, the film questions, what does beauty mean? Obviously more than just looks. It's what's on the inside, because superficial thoughts and ideas, they're not authentic. And the same with social media, filters, self-regulation. Most people, they're not being their true self, and it's about acceptance for who you are, and mainly on the inside too. Obviously that idea of culture trapped through screens as well, and control, and the idea of free thought and acceptance, and that's, question those ideas, and conflict and discrimination and injustices because of inequalities, and keep questioning authority, follow your own path, follow your own freedom if you know what that means for you too. And sometimes you might need to sacrifice to redeem yourself at times too, make up for your mistakes. And there is that sub sort of plot too, especially through David's parents, of science and ethics and experimentation and informed consent and caring for the environment and all that sort of stuff. It's all thrown in, but it's all not done very well. What did I take away from this film? I think this is tough, because I couldn't help but think the whole film that having Joey King play a character who's meant to be ugly just doesn't work. She's anything but ugly physically. And I think that's really hard when you have a good-looking person who then is meant to become pretty. At the end when she has her reveal, because she does become a pretty, looks so unrealistic, looks so frustrated me. IMDb, we have a section where it's like, hey, do we check anyone out on IMDb to see if we recognized them? I didn't use the internet to look up a person, but I did use it to look up this book that Shay shares with Tally, and we see it later on in David's parents' house. I tried to see what it was called, but I feel like the flash of the cover was too quick, couldn't get it, so I needed to look it up. And the book was Thoreau's Walden, which is this reflection about Thoreau's simple living in natural surroundings, so a real-life narrative, which obviously ties to David's crew and their lifestyle too. So obviously very specific placement of that narrative, but at the same time, is the generation of, unless you've read the book, is the generation of today going to pick up on that and go and work out what that actually symbolizes or means, because it's not a reference that I would have got without looking it up either. Questions, ponderings, thoughts, ideas. I think Dr. Cable as a villain, what are her motives? We have no idea why she wants to turn everyone to pretty. It just doesn't make sense. I don't get it. Does she think she's fixing the world and that's it? Because that's a really poor motive for a villain. Shay and Tally, there's a scene where they go exploring and they leave these rings on a tree branch because they say, it's okay, we've left them in the same place. They think we'll be having a picnic, we can go and explore. It just didn't make sense to me, because those scenes previously, we'd seen that Tally broke into the city and was being chased out of the city, and she's so concerned about people finding out that she'd broken into the city. Maybe I missed something. Did she take her ring off before she went to the city? Because otherwise that does not make sense as a plot point either. And finally, I guess that there's this, throughout whenever Joey's not out in the bush, not Joey King, her character Tally, whenever she's not out in the bush, she's in this short skirt. I just felt really demeaning and not needed. I don't know, it just felt weird, felt off. Anyway, ready to wrap this up. We give the film a rating out of 5. For me, I can like this kind of film when the themes and the ideas are done subtly, I guess, and cleverly. This just puts everything out there and never actually finishes off on the idea that looks don't matter. And I think that's the key thing. Focus on that. You have the main character having to do the procedure at the end, which is what she's against, because her character changes, so she's now against it, but now she still does it. And it's this conclusion that audiences are left with just the hope that she's going to be saved. I don't know, very ordinary. 1.5 out of 5 for me, pretty ordinary. We're on socials, we've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. Question I had was, will Netflix actually make a follow-up film? I think it's tough. They filmed this 3 years ago, so you'd almost have to recast, because everyone is going to look so much older. They're already 10 years older than the characters they were supposed to be playing anyway. So I think it's tough. I think it's probably going to sit with this and that's it. And I'm sorry, McG, you're not getting a sequel. Anyway, we do have a huge back catalogue, nearly 400 Netflix original films. Give us a listen, give us a download if you can, like us, share us around. We have our regular episodes on a Monday, so tune in then, and I'll see you there.